also. And we have here with us, of course, Associate Prof. Rajesh Rai, as well as two alumni from the department. So we'll be hearing from them in just a minute. Yeah.
So Mark, should I begin now?
Maybe we'll wait for maybe a minute more, and then we'll get started.
Okay, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it's time to on some fanciful music.
Yeah, actually, music.
Okay, people.
Yeah, okay. So I think we can get started. Welcome everyone to the CHS Open House and to our department talks. The first one of this afternoon, which is on South Asian Studies. We have with us Associate Prof. Rajesh Rai, and I'll be passing the time on to him in just a moment. But just before that, we are going to be taking questions via the Zoom Q&A function. So if you will find a tab on your screen with a Q&A window, so you can ask your questions there, and then we can answer them at the end of the session. Yeah. So over to you, Prof. Rai.
Hi everyone. First, I must congratulate you on your entry to the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. I can understand how important this must be for your life. And I remember the time when I got into NUS, which is a long time ago. But nonetheless, I think a very important one for me, and I'm sure for you. So welcome to the College of Humanities and Sciences. And let me introduce you to South Asian Studies, but perhaps I can begin with a preamble to talk about Asian Studies at NUS. NUS has perhaps one of the largest coteries of specialists in Asian studies of any university around the globe. Okay, so the number of scholars who are working in Asian studies is considerable, and these are some of the best scholars known around the world, and which is why Asian studies, and indeed its core module, is part of your core curriculum at the College of Humanities and Sciences. Now, South Asian Studies is one of the 5 pillars that make up this Asian division. So the South Asian Studies program focuses on one part of the Asian continent. And what I'm going to do, or in the slides that follow, I'm going to introduce you to South Asia. And what better way to introduce you to South Asia than with a map, right? Now here you can see that, of course, this is not the map of South Asia. It is the map of North America. Now, why would I show you that? I'll explain that in a second. And next, you will see a map of Europe and a map of South America. Why is this pertinent to our discussion? Well, it's intended to give you a sense of perspective. If you add the entire population of North America and the entire population of South America and the entire population of Europe, perhaps collectively about 70 countries or so, you will get the equivalence to the 1.86 to 1.87 billion people that make up South Asia. It's close to 1/4 of the world's population, but they live in an area that is just about 4 to 5% of the total land area in the world, right? It is a region that is called sometimes a subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent, in part because of its physical features. It is demarcated in the north by the roof of the world, the Himalayas, in the south by the peninsula, and thus you have ocean around it, that marked off this region from the rest of Asia. And for this reason, therefore, it's marked out as a subcontinent, which is not to suggest that the area is in any way homogeneous. You couldn't have a homogeneous region with 1/4 of the world's population there. It is marked by tremendous diversity, a diversity we'll explore in a moment. It is also a region, again, coming back to giving you perspective and the scale of South Asia, that produces an Australasia every year. Every year, the population of this region grows by an entire Australasia. Here is one last map for you. It shows one country of South Asia, and that is Bangladesh, with 162 million people. It is equivalent in population, no, indeed exceeds, or perhaps about equal to the population of the entire Russia, which is marked in red in the map here, right? So you see this small region has the same population as this large region. Population aside, perhaps I can provide you another example to try and make sense of the size and scale of South Asia. Recently, it's in the news. Unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons. It's COVID, and it's spreading rapidly in South Asia. On average, over the last 8-9 days, and this fear has spread even to Singapore now, over the last 8-9 days, no, perhaps slightly longer, couple of weeks, India alone, one of the countries of South Asia, is seeing on average about 400,000 COVID people infected by COVID on a daily basis. The real number is probably higher, much higher than that. But 400,000 is an official estimate on a daily basis on average. Now, if you had 400,000 people getting infected daily in Singapore, in 2 weeks, all of Singapore would be infected by the virus. Okay. Now, if I was to tell you that India's situation is not going to improve, and that every day also 400,000 people are going to be infected by the virus, how long do you think it will take the entire India to be infected with COVID? Now you can try and do maths, it's quite simple. And I'll tell you the answer. It's 9.5 years. Perhaps with that mathematical model, you will now understand the scale of that region in population terms. It's a region, as I mentioned, of tremendous diversity. Only about 50% of the population, perhaps slightly less, is in the middle class. And the aspiring middle class seek a home like this here. Perhaps a Singaporean, a person of the middle class in Singapore also aspires to a home like that, right? Condo unit, internal, I guess, pool, or I don't know exactly what that is, jacuzzi, pool outside, a tennis court outside. The other half of India is still in poverty. And this is a story across South Asia. They live here or in places like this, in slums in the city. This is Dharavi, perhaps one of the largest slums in the world, or in villages across India, 600,000 of those. So that diversity is evident in terms of social inequalities. It is evident even in individuals. If you live in South Asia, it is not just simply a matter of cultural diversity. It's as if you will pass by areas which contain centuries of history. You could for a moment be visiting sites that will make you feel as if you lived in a region 1,000 years ago, right? With monuments that old in many places. Now, in this individual, you see, interestingly, he's perhaps some kind of Hindu priest type figure. And he's doing something that we don't encourage our students to do, and neither do we encourage priests to do. And perhaps precisely the reason why I've chosen this photo, he's smoking a cigarette. Perhaps it contains more than just tobacco. And he's using the mobile phone. As you can see, this picture is a bit old, so it's one of the older models of the mobile phone. And perhaps he's giving some kind of consultancy to an international client. This is commonplace these days. And here, of course, images of women. This is a region in which women are respected as deities and indeed adorn temples. As you can see in the center, the goddess Durga riding on a tiger, and so many prime ministers and heads of state from who are women. Here, Indira Gandhi, and of course the Prime Minister of Bangladesh before, and indeed the President of Sri Lanka before. But at the same time, a region known for patriarchy. Its tremendous difference in equities between men and women, or differences in that, of violence and abuse against women. And indeed, this has prevailed in these societies, or in many parts of these societies, for a very long time. And here too, therefore, in the kind of divide that is evident in gender, you see a diversity of sorts. And here are the markers of that diversity. This is the land that, of course, in perhaps over the last 25, 30 years, you've seen economic development, growth that is perhaps second only to China around the globe over 2 decades. Today, it manufactures some of the cars that we use on our roads. And you can see here the Range Rover Evoque. If you see on the streets of India, sometimes or oftentimes you see Porsche Cayennes. It's not produced in India, of course, but at the same time you will also see the bullock cart commonly, and also the camel, and also the elephant. This is recognized, or at least the region is recognized, as having some of the most fertile soil in the world. And it accounts for one of the reasons why the region is, in fact, supporting such a heavy population. So it's one of the most fertile regions in the world. Alexander was said to have exclaimed when he conquered parts of South Asia in the 3rd century BC, his awe at the number of times you had crops could be grown and rotated in a year, so that you had multiple harvests in the land. And he was in awe of the bountiful land. So while you may have some of the most fertile regions in the world, famine exists, and there are people who go without food on a daily basis, as depicted in the picture here as well. So these are all markers of the diversity of the region in terms of different types of inequalities. It is culturally also very diverse, linguistically too. Perhaps 600 plus languages still survive in South Asia today. They are languages that differ in terms of both the way they are spoken and the way that they are written. They come from at least 4 different families. And so you have some of the scripts here in this map. So when we study South Asian studies, what we do is we look closely at this region in an integrated, interdisciplinary fashion. We look at India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, Afghanistan. These are the states that we study closely. And saying that we approach the study of this region in a multidisciplinary fashion, what do we look at? We look at society, we look at politics, we look at history, we look at religion, economy, literature and language, philosophy, migration, and environment. So when you enter CHS, of course, you will do a number of core modules, but you'll also have the opportunity to do a variety of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary modules. They may sometimes support as well the disciplines that you seek to engage in as part of your major. Uh, I would suggest to you, if you have any interest in South Asian studies, or indeed in Asian studies in general, that you should perhaps have a look at some of the modules that we have listed. I will go through some of those in a moment, but I want to underline to you, how can you study South Asian studies at NUS? Well, one way of doing it is really you begin your journey with the Asian Studies Integrated module, and then along the way, that's a core module of CHS, but along the way, you may want to do as a gateway module, the module called Discover South Asia, People, Culture and Development. This is the gateway into South Asia. Now, if you seek to do it as a major, all you need to do is 15 modules over the course of your 4 years of study at CHS. Or you can do it as a second major by doing 10 modules. You can do a minor in India studies with just 5 modules. Or you can do some modules as part of your electives, or you can go on to do a minor in Asian studies, which involves perhaps a couple of South Asian studies modules and a couple from other Asian studies modules. And this, along with your core Asian studies module, will give you the minor in Asian studies. We have a variety of field studies. We operate this with a number of partners that we have established in India and in other parts of South Asia. So, for example, Ashoka University is a partner, and we do field studies. Our students go there for field studies with them. We guarantee internships for majors. We have developed connections with the Institute of South Asian Studies, the museums, and some NGOs and private companies who offer a special position for our students as interns. You can do it as a general education module, and I have 2 listed here. South Asia and Singapore and Bollywood, Unpacking the Magic. Our modules are 95% run in English. Okay, so we, in fact, you do not need to have a South Asian language base to study South Asia, but you do have the option of taking up the study of Tamil and Hindi if you're interested, and this is run via the Center of Language Studies. South Asian Studies does have a couple of modules are offered bilingually in English and Tamil, although 95% of our modules are not. Okay, so why should you do South Asian studies? There are very few specialists in this region in Singapore, and you are going to be able to specialize in an area where there's a demand for specialists, but where there's very limited supply. So our people are in a variety of areas. Our majors are now in media, in consultancy, in public sector, in defense, in foreign affairs, in academia, in the heritage sector, and so on. There are perhaps close to, if I'm not mistaken, close to 6,000 multinationals now that operate between South Asia and Singapore. And perhaps this is another avenue to find a job. Some of these are very small, of course, but they are also large ones. And it is a rich, interesting region with a diverse cultural heritage. And here we have some pictures of our alumni, and you will see some figures that you may recognize who are part of our panel today. So Manoj is one who second majored in South Asia and was former first secretary of the Singapore High Commission in India. And currently, I don't know the exact nature of his job, but I don't think I'm allowed to reveal it. Then there's Dr. Ashwin Parameswaran, who went on to do something in academia. There's Mr. Ahmad Inaz, who also second majored in South Asian Studies. He's former Minister of Finance in Maldives until a coup overthrew the government. And now he's a lecturer, often the job for many of people after coups and so on. And then we have Miss Lee Wei Fan, who's here with us today, and who I'll ask to share a few words about her experience in South Asian Studies, and Miss Vidya Subramaniam, who is also our major and who is, well, second major in South Asian Studies, and who's currently a doctoral candidate at the University of Oxford. So this is our gateway module, Discover South Asia, People, Culture and Development. It's multidisciplinary course. It touches on culture, religion, politics, and so on. This is a taste of SASP modules offered at CHS. This is not our full list. We offer about 30 to 35 modules, but this is about half the list. And so right at the top, only because it will perhaps galvanize your interest, is Framing Bollywood, Unpacking the Magic, a popular course at Asian Studies at NUS. Love, Sex and Marriage in South Asia, South Asian Cultures, The Story of Indian Business, Nation and Nationalism, and so on and so forth. You can look at our brochure to have a closer look at some of these modules, okay? Gender and Society, another aspect. These are some of the bilingual based modules that we offer. Tamil Studies 1, Tamil Studies 2 at South Asian Studies. We also have Tamil being taught at the Center of Language Studies and Hindi being taught at the Center of Language Studies, which is part of language learning. For further information on the program, you can please go to our website, which is www, and you can read the rest. Click on it and you can look more closely at the brochure on South Asian Studies. But at this point, let me introduce you to my co-panelists. Excuse me for talking for 20 minutes. And we have with us today our alumna, so not alumni, yeah? Alumna, you see. So our alumna, Miss Lee Wei Fan first, who was our first honors student at South Asian Studies. I don't want to tell you when because it will reveal her age. And Miss Vidya Subramaniam here with us. And perhaps I can begin by asking Wei Fan, Wei Fan, do you regret majoring in South Asian Studies? B, tell me about your experience. And C, perhaps okay, I'll take on a few more with questions to you in a moment. Wei Fan, please.
Sure, thanks, Dr. Rai. So absolutely no regrets if anyone's listening in, no regrets at all. Super grateful and yeah, I still remember the days in the South Asian Studies program very fondly. My experience there was a very, very interdisciplinary one. So, be prepared to be switching between modules from history to gender studies to literature to philosophy. And the great thing is that it really trains you to be flexible. I think that's one of the big benefits of Asian Studies departments, is that you have to keep switching. And actually it's a really good life skill in general. So yeah, I think the experience was a very positive one. I was with a lot of colleagues in the program like Vidya, and most people who join the program are genuinely passionate and excited about the region. So you don't really, I don't know if I can say this, but you don't really get students who are just there to pass 4 years going through the grind. You get very stimulating colleagues who all have their own specific interests in the South Asian region, and it's a very collaborative and I think intellectually stimulating place to be within NUS.
Okay, tell me, okay, why did you choose it? What made you actually choose to do South Asia? I mean, it's not something that comes immediately to anybody, right? No, very few people are entering NUS wanting to do South Asian Studies. And I'm wondering, what is it that triggered you to do it, Wei Fan?
Yeah, so I mean, the trigger was a little bit frivolous. I mean, I was always watching Bollywood from a younger age. And actually, before university began, I was already doing some external Hindi courses, but they were very superficial, just learn some phrases and sing some songs type of thing. So when I joined NUS, I had a very open mind. I was just doing lots of different modules, and I thought I was going to major in literature actually, which I did end up minoring in. But I think I think one of the modules that I took was South Asian in Singapore, which was run by Dr. Rai.
That's
And
mine.
yes, that is yours. And it was great because for me it was about an academic study that was very real because we were, Dr. Rai brings you to Little India. He brings you, well, actually mostly to Little India, all around Little India. And it's really about connecting theory with what you see in real life communities around you. And it made me realize that, studying a region doesn't have to only be about the region, but it can also be about the diaspora. So all the Indian communities around the world. It can be about understanding your neighbor better. It can be about being able to speak to someone down the road in their own language. So there was, I think, that very human, real, and intimate aspect of it that attracted me to it. And then, of course, the other part of it was the interdisciplinary part, because I tend to be someone who can't sit still. So I need to do lots of different things. So the fact that I could do history and then philosophy, and then next week do literature, and then next semester do a gender studies module, that was very exciting for me. And it's a way of really specializing in a region, but then having to stretch across all the different disciplines.
Okay. Wait, let me stop my share because then we can see this us in larger versions. Okay. One last question from you, Weifan, before we go to Vidya.
Sure.
Weifan, how did this influence your career trajectory? So I'm not just talking about your current job, but really the kind of concern I guess a student has coming in is really, what do I work as after I do South Asian studies? And I try and tell students that, my majors or the majors out of this department have never had a problem getting a job. They are a bit picky, but that's not to suggest that they actually have real issues in getting jobs. And indeed, perhaps our employment statistics are better than most departments. But this is not something that's well known. So how did it influence yours?
Yeah, so I currently work in a space that I guess would generally be defined as insights and strategy. So I work with companies. Most of my career has been working with companies who are interested in India as a market of opportunities and are trying to understand the people who on ground who are buying their products or interacting their products or experiencing their brands. So I started out working in India, doing a lot of commercial ethnography. And the idea is really it's really bridging my understanding of Indian consumer culture and making them actually humanizing consumers, and not just saying, oh, they're just there to buy something, but what are their needs, what are their wants, what are their anxieties, what are their cultural concerns, what are their religious concerns, and how does that impact the way they interact with brands or products. And then using that to create a bridge with my clients or the companies, MNCs, who often just need to develop some empathy for the region. So I think that's really what I have been doing. What's been helpful is, first of all, being able to use that interdisciplinary background to dimensionalize the study, the consumer study. So, for example, I think one of the most fun projects I've worked on is for Lego, where they wanted to understand what is the meaning of play in India. And it was really just, me going down, talking to kids, talking to parents, talking to educators to understand what is that cultural notion beyond just saying superficial play from a basic level that we understand today. Or things like atta, which is, wheat, packaged wheat. There was a concern about why people are not upgrading to packaged wheat. And it sounds so superficial, like it's just something like wheat, but we actually managed to understand the entire issue as an issue of masculinity and the association of wheat with masculinity versus rice with femininity, and some of those cultural stereotypes, which actually allow clients to look at their own products or their own categories in very new ways. And then that allows them to create solutions, better marketing, better communications. and so on for their consumers. So to me, at the end of the day, it's a win-win. It's like, helping clients design better products and services for the consumers on ground in India, and at the same time, the Indian consumer therefore finding something that is much more relevant to them than a Western brand coming in and just saying, "Here's my product," and I assume you like it.
Okay, excellent. I think that's wow. I finally understand what you do, lah. Which is a bit troubling. Okay, let me go on to Vidya now. And Vidya is also our major, and today she's now a doctoral student at the University of Oxford. So very quickly, Vidya, tell us why you chose, same questions, why you chose SASP, why are you pursuing further study in South Asian studies? What is it that continues to fascinate you?
Right. Okay. So in a way, I started off super pragmatic, right? In terms of choosing majors. It was, in order to major, I think we had to do like 16 modules or something. So I kind of took module lists from a few departments and just counted, am I interested enough in 16 modules to finish this? And the only one I finished was basically South Asian studies now. And I think precisely because of like what Wei Fen is saying, that there is all this diversity within the department, that you're not only doing history, that you're not only doing philosophy or only doing religion, that you get to mix and match, to kind of fit your very specific interests. Yeah. And in the same kind of stream, it's also possible to avoid things that you're not interested in. So there was some like hardcore econs modules or like, economic development stuff that I was just like, never mind. So that's how I chose South Asian studies, and kind of like Wei Fen as well. I didn't come in. No,
just to stop you, did it support your major that you were doing, which was politics?
South Asian is my first major.
Okay, so your second major was politics. Okay, don't tekan me, okay? Sorry. I know that you were divided at some stage, right?
I was. So yeah, also quite early on, I decided to second major in politics because I was in a way interested in the kind of theories I was learning in the political class, in pol science classes, but not enough to want to do like all aspects of political science. Right. So this is what I mean by being able to like avoid some streams that you're not interested in, which with South Asian kind of helped. No, and the other thing I wanted to say is that, even though I am of South Asian background, that was not at all a kind of deciding factor for me, because I came in with 0 South Asian language skills, right? I think you all know this, I took Chinese in school. And so like, I didn't even have language skills to start off with. And what I wanted to say is to those listening in is that don't think of language as a kind of limit on what you can do in South Asia, because ultimately I ended up studying Sikhs and Punjab, right? Meaning I learned a language that was not even my own in order to go and do my master's in South Asian studies. So with that, let me get to your second question about why go on. So kind of after the first semester, second semester, I realized actually I'm kind of good at this. And that was really it. It was like, oh, okay, I'm not bad at this. Let me continue. And sometime around the 3rd year, I wrote a paper on memory in the Golden Temple, right? So memory in Punjab. And just found myself fascinated with those questions and the kinds of like multiple directional inquiries I could take on, because South Asian studies is such that you can one day write a chapter on religion, right? And look into theology and the practice of religion. And another day look into visuals, right? So really focusing on visuals as the subject of your study, so not even the object of your study. And yeah, because the questions just kind of keep growing and growing, I have not stopped asking those questions. That basically is where I'm at.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, and I think it's a great time for us to take some questions. Of course, some of you all are on Facebook who I can't see, but then others are here, and it's a wonderful time, and it's really a small group. So I hope that you'll not be shy and just ask us questions. And I have to tell you that South Asian Studies is pretty much like that. So it's a small department. 8, 9 of us academics. Our students are always walking through our doors. Now, I wish these days it would be more, but because of COVID, it's not been as much. It's something that we miss. But this is a great time for you to ask questions, and please don't be shy. And this could be wider questions on CHS, but also on South Asian studies. Going once. Hi, Mark, do you have a question for me?
I do not actually have a question for you, unfortunately. But I mean, while we wait to see if any questions come on, I was just wondering whether you have any commonly asked questions that you would like to address. I think a lot of it was addressed in your presentation and in the questions that you asked Wei Fen and Vidya anyway. But is there anything else that kind of you are commonly asked that you think you might want to address right now?
Hey, y'all are the students or former students. What questions you think students want to know? Y'all are more in touch.
The big one we used to always get at open house is study South Asia can do what? And I think in a way, Wei Fen and I have tried to answer that with like, basically you can do whatever you want to do. And then now you are just a South Asian expert. And if I can kind of just add to that. So, Wei Fen now takes on ethnography in like the industry, right, for businesses. And I'm an academic. But I also wanted to kind of nuance what it means to be an expert, right? And if I can draw from my own experience to say that I am also called on very frequently to advise on theatre and productions, right? So media productions, I'm also asked to write. So whether it's writing reviews or reflection pieces on films, productions that have a South Asian kind of theme subject to it, so you can be an expert full-time, you can also be a part-time expert.
Yeah. And Wei Fen, I think you are now working in the China market, and I'm wondering how this entire experience helped you.
Yeah, I just want to add on that. I mean, I gave some examples of the work I do in India, but of course, having a consultancy and industry perspective means actually working a lot across Southeast Asia as well as North Asia. And what's really important is being steeped in one culture. The thing is, for me, I just feel that, studying cultures is kind of effective only in comparison. And this is my personal perspective, but just for industry, it's only in comparison. It's very rare that companies only want to go to one country. So, it's not like Pepsi only wants to be in India. They also want to be in Thailand. They also want to be in Vietnam. And often global strategy means taking into account all the similarities and differences across different cultures, and then coming to the best fit across it. So I think it's not so much like Vidya said that you only are an expert in one thing. It's about taking that perspective and enriching any other topic that you are studying or interested in or making money from.
Okay, wonderful. So this is an important question, which is about work, right? So great, we touched on it enough. Now let's ask what other things do you think a student really wants to know about South Asia? If there's one module from South Asian studies, if you could go back to it, which one would it be? Yeah, you don't have to just choose my module because I'm here.
Can I choose a module that I didn't take but I helped teach?
Okay, yes, carry on.
Sex and love.
So you just a word to the audience. Vidya also came back to be a teaching assistant with us.
Yeah, I would take marriage, sex, love, because now that I
marriage, sex, love in South Asia.
Right, marriage, sex, love in South Asia. And the weird thing is that I find it really helpful now that I'm doing a PhD in anthropology, even though my work is not at all about marriage, sex, or love, unfortunately. But that module is first of all super fun, right, as the title suggests, but also very easily kind of introduces very important basic kinship theories and all these ways of thinking, which are foundational in anthropology, right? But also gives you all the fun ethnographic data, case studies from South Asia. So do that. And it's like, I won't say it's easy, but it's level 2, so it's not a pain.
Okay. And Wei Fen, I bet you can't remember which modules you did.
Oh my gosh, I can't remember. I just can't remember the exact names. Definitely also one on religious texts. I remember that one was very foundational for me, and it has really impacted a lot of my current work because it's understanding the framework in which people think and live and are motivated by. So even though, it was really fun because we were studying like the Kama Sutra, which, every student is going to be like, oh, what's in there? But beyond that, it's also about just understanding the way paradigms are formed when we look at society and, how people look at women and so on. So I think that's one of the big ones that's influenced me.
Okay, and please note that Wei-Fen did earlier mention South Asia and Singapore,
yes.
and
I also taught that one, so also do that one.
And I also want to highlight two other modules that I think are really worthwhile to look at, and maybe three. One is a module called Beast, People, and Wild Environments, which wasn't available at your time. I'm sorry, but it's available now, and really is the kind of emphasis that has gone into environmental studies and really what is called the Anthropocene, which I shall not explain here because it will take up the rest of my 3 minutes. But nonetheless, about environment and South Asia, which is one really interesting course that we have. The Gateway module, Discover South Asia, is the way to enter it. Okay, and I think I would encourage every student to do this, and it touches on different areas, right? So it kind of exposes you into history, politics, cinema, society, and so on and so forth. So this is the way to enter. Another module that perhaps I should mention, and I want to tell you that it took us years to actually launch the module because we were afraid that we will get, it won't be great for the image of the department, but retrospectively, this was one of the best decisions that we made, which was to actually launch the Bollywood module. And so there was some initial criticism, oh, this is about cinema. Well, cinema is a great mode in which to make sense of a society, even if it's dramatized. And what we have found now is that the students who go through the cinema module get through these movies. And while we again emphasize that these are dramatic illustrations, nonetheless get a sense of the values, the mores, the issues within that society, perhaps in a way that we didn't experience with other modules. So that's another great course that one can go through to begin to make sense of South Asia. And so I think those are the key modules that I would like to emphasize to you. And I hope that during this journey in CHS that you would consider taking. And now we are coming to 12:45, so we will bring this wonderful session to an end. And
I think we do have one question that came in.
Yay!
It's an interesting thing. I mean, so if you were not talking to a student, but you were talking to a parent who is concerned about good career trajectory and things like that, what is some advice you might give? So if a student is trying to convince his or her parents.
So I want you to say this. If it's per student telling this to the parent, let me make this clear, and our facts the facts that we have will bear this out. Less pertinent than the major itself is really the interest that you develop in a major, and which will finally translate in some ways in how well you will do in it. Okay, very oftentimes people think that, look, X, I don't want to name the department because my friends are going to and this is going all over, but you go and do X, I'll definitely get a job because X people are all in demand. Well, I tell you, 90% of other students are thinking the same thing. And we know demand and supply, right? Am I revealing modules or majors? But never mind, we know how demand and supply works, right? So that doesn't really help. And I can tell you this across the board, that sometimes students think that this is the major that's made out for them because there's a tremendous demand. They'll find that 90% of your friends think the same way, and that's not going to help their cause at the end of their 4 years. And in South Asian studies, what we find is that there are very few people, but really passionate students like Wei-Fen and Vidya, and many others who have become our majors, who've done really well in it, and who finally find that actually the job is it's an important issue, but was never hampered by their particular major that they did, but rather the passion that they developed out of doing what they wanted to do, which finally enabled them to do well and to develop all the life skills that they required. So do something that you really like and you're good at, because in the end you will succeed because of that, and you will learn much more out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Rai. Yeah.
Thank you.
Weifan and Vidya, any final thoughts on this, or maybe if you're talking to yourself as a prospective student, any advice you would give just to round us off?
Yeah, I would just say, since you don't have to declare your major right off the bat, right? You can take some modules first. So take those modules, see what you're actually interested in doing, like do the work and see what you're actually interested in doing. And if you can, do more than one module. So in my very first semester, I actually took, the gateway module for South Asian studies, but I also took a level 3000 module, which was the religious text module that Weifan was talking about, which kind of gave me a fuller sense of what it means to do work as a South Asian studies major. And that kind of really cemented the decision. So I would do that if you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's about going in with an open mind, and then, if there is a way to find a win-win situation between what you want and what your parents want, it's, doing Asian studies is actually a really good way to explore that because of the interdisciplinary nature. So really, your parents are saying econs, you can do economics modules with South Asia focus, and then you can also do a couple of other ones, and then you can decide. So I think it's about making sure you empower yourself with the knowledge and information to make a more informed decision just based on your actual experience for 4 or more years compared to, a very far off future, which you still have lots of time to shape, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Can we, shall we cut at this stage, Mark, or do we have any more?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Prof. Rai, for
Thank
joining us,
you.
and also to Vidya and Weifan for taking time out to join us. Right now, we are gonna run a little poll just to get some feedback on the session and how you found it. And as you're doing that, next up we have at 1:00 the departmental talk for Chinese language. So if you are interested to join us, you can find the link on our website, and that is chs.nus.edu.sg. chs.nus.edu.sg. Yeah. Of course, if you have any further questions, you can also, drop us an email at askchs@nus.edu.sg, or you can drop us a phone call during office hours as well. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's about it for now. Thank you again, Prof. Rai, Weifan, and Vidya for joining us right now. Yeah, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.